Good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be here with you all today as part of IT at Cork's Diversity in STEM panel series, which today we'll be focusing on next generation planning. My name is Lee Maximini, and I'm an Associate Director within KPMG's Management Consulting Practice in Cork, and I will be your MC for today's session. I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce my wonderful panel for today. So Julia, I might start with you if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So hello, my name is Julia Sheehan. I'm a third year financial maths and actuarial science student in UCC, and I'm also chairperson of the Women in STEM Society in UCC for this academic year. So the society is relatively new. It was founded in 2018, and I started on the founding committee as first year rep. And that year we were lucky enough to win Best New Society in UCC and Best New Society at the Board of Irish College Societies Society Awards. Following that, in second year, I went on to the role as vice chairperson, and that year we won Best Society overall in UCC and Best Overall Society event for Irish Campus Day. So that brings me on to being chairperson this year. So really what I bring to this panel is we worked with 29 different companies last year to kind of give girls the toolkit to succeed in their careers. So we focus on that through networking, workshops, career events, and planning. So I bring the perspective of a student. I'm a student myself, so I'm applying for internships and things like that at the moment. But also I spend my days on calls with recruiters figuring out how do we attract students to companies and how do we make people want to work for you? So I kind of have both sides. So I suppose that's really what I bring to the panel.
Great, thank you. Mairead, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Mairead O'Flynn. I'm the University Relationship Manager for VMware. I covered the whole EMEA region. So I suppose my job is to build out the strategy for how we engage with universities and engage with students across EMEA to promote our brand and make sure that students want to come work for VMware. And that's through, university events, career fairs, and partnership. So it's a fantastic role. I'm very passionate about young talent. I remember myself being, leaving college and that feeling of like, what am I going to do? And I don't see a career out there for me. And now that I've kind of gone through like my own career journey, like I always tell people, it's not a straightforward path, it's a complete maze. So I'm passionate about making sure that other students coming out feel the same, that they can, fall into things by mistake. So hopefully I'll be able to share some of my thoughts on that later on.
Brilliant, thank you. Ashlyn, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for sure. So hey everyone, my name is Ashlyn Crowley. I'm on the talent acquisition team here in Dell Technologies. I'm here just over 2 years now, so really enjoying my role. And I think what's most interesting about this event today is that I'm also involved in the university relation recruitment. So that being career fairs, virtual career fairs now, and virtual Dell on tours as well that we're doing, as well as working very closely with the college course coordinators as well. So really looking forward to talking today and also sharing some perspectives with you.
Brilliant, thank you. And Prince, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Prince Sebastian, and I work with IBM as a DevOps engineer, and I finished my master's in computing science from UCC itself. And at my workplace, I do most of the tasks with development and operations both together. And today I'll be speaking about, I'll be sharing my thoughts basically about values and culture and how important it is to have organizations, culture, and having aligned with values with their employees like. And also my personal experience in terms of how the COVID all experiences for working from home and or maybe sleeping at workplace kind of thing, both the same. So I'll be sharing my thoughts and views about it. And yeah, thanks for the organizers for giving me a chance to share my views. Cheers.
Great, thanks guys. So I think it's safe to say that we've got a great variety of experience and perspectives across the board. So let's kick in. So planning for the next generation and purposefully building that workforce of the future, it's probably never been more important than it is right now, notwithstanding the current global pandemic, which we will talk a little bit about later on, right? And I think the one thing that we can say with absolute certainty is that the world of work that we knew, it'll never be the same again. Currently, we still just about have 5 generations in the workforce at the moment. And, we can take from that our biggest challenges and opportunities are yet to come. So the question we must ask ourselves, and that we're going to attempt to answer, or at the very least try and shed a little bit of light on here today, is how do we as leaders and future leaders plan for that future to make sure that we can attract and retain the best talent, and to do so keeping the current maturing workforce engaged. So I want to set a little bit of context here about who exactly are the next generation. So we know that the next generation are the commonly referred to group known as Generation Z, but do we really know enough about them to future-proof our respective businesses? So we know that the generation, they're not merely the next wave of millennials. They're real game changers, they're industry shapers, they stand up for what they believe in, and they are out to change the world, no doubt. And we know that the next generation have a really unique perspective on careers and how to define success, both in life and in the workplace. And now more than ever before, due to our always-on way of life, our technology-enabled devices, our wearables, social media, and our more recent new ways of working, those two worlds have started to collide in ways that other generations are still racing to adapt to. In the US at the moment, Generation Z is constituting upward of 30% of the population, and it is now currently the most diverse generation in all of history. So just before we kick into the panel discussion, I just want to take a really quick snapshot view of this generation just to put things into perspective. And Julia, you can correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but Gen Zers are the first generation that have never known a world without the internet. They will never have used a phone with a cord, and they most certainly have never used a floppy disk, and I would be surprised if anyone has ever seen one or potentially even have heard of one. So the other thing I think, just to kind of put things in perspective, is that most Gen Zers don't really remember a time before the September 11th attacks on the US. So just to kind of put everything into perspective, if we couple this then with Generation X and the baby boomers, who still make up a significant portion of our current workforce, organizations must now take action and really look at how they attract and retain that talent in the future. So the next generation are entering the workforce at a key inflection point in the evolution of work. And historically, joining the workforce meant, for me anyways, you join the workforce at the bottom of the ladder, learning how the business really worked and doing potentially boring but necessary work to really learn those more valuable and professional skills and transferable skills. But this has changed in recent times, and we've witnessed it changing. Technology and automation and AI have eliminated many of these roles, and this change is happening at such a pace that graduates that are joining the workforce now, they're joining in the full knowledge that some of the roles that they're going to end up doing in their careers, they haven't even been conceived, never mind created. So with jobs undergoing such rapid change, how are companies thinking differently to attract this talent? So Marie, let's start with you. What's your view?
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I remember leaving college and being like, oh my God, where am I going to find a job? And looking at newspapers and stuff. Like, you're kind of the one just hoping that any company will take you. But now I feel like it's the candidate that has the control. Like, and as you said, like Gen Z, they're more tech savvy than any generation out there. Like, they've grown up with technology and information, and the first thing that they're going to do is research. I think there's some stats that, like, before they apply for a job, they look at about 8 different places. So companies need to have a really, really solid online presence. They need to have a great website. They need to have customer stories out there about what they're doing, why they're making an impact on the world. Employee testimonials, their Glassdoor reviews need to be really solid. And again, as well, like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, all those platforms are being viewed to see what's it like working for your company. So you really, as a company, need to be thinking about, like, what's your essence, and how do you portray that through media so that it's out there for the world to kind of go in and look. And saying that, then it needs to be authentic and real. And that's why I think that using employees and having them share their own experiences and stories, is one of the best things to do, because it really helps build like the culture and the brand. Also, like, as you mentioned, in terms of the roles, it's crazy. Like, every year that we're recruiting, we're getting new and new roles that we've never even heard about. So there's no way that these graduates have heard about them, and there's no way that the universities have heard about them to kind of prep them for it. So I think when you think of a recruiter's role, I think even that is changing, especially when it comes to young talent. We're almost seen now as, like, we have to put ourselves into a role as a career advisor, so that we're not just saying, oh, you've applied for that job, that we're kind of proactively reaching out, we're identifying where the talent is. Like, some of these people don't even know they have these skill sets and talent, and we're reaching out and we're saying, you know what, we've got some great career opportunities for you, and we're taking the time then to talk them through the different roles and how they all interconnect, and helping them understand where their skill set, you know, could align. So it's more of a two-way conversation where we're kind of, you know, guiding them into the right career. Also, I think as well, the interview process. Gone are the days where, you know, I feel like you would come in. I remember doing some horrible interviews, you know, where you'd come in, you're kind of sitting in the middle of the room and people are just trying to catch you out, you know. I think now the interview process is almost like, I'd compare it to, like, if you're dating the right person, it doesn't need to be hard. And the same if you're interviewing for the right company, it should feel like a conversation, you know, where you're talking about your needs, they're talking about their needs, and you're like, yeah, this is working. And I think, like, if you, like, to sum it all up, if you've got a really good online presence, you've got like a really good recruitment team who are supportive, who are guiding people through the right roles for them, not just trying to push them into something just to get their head count. And then you've got a really streamlined interview process where the person already feels like they're part of the family, they're part of the culture. I think that's how you're going to attract the best talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
You make a super point there as well, Mairead, in terms of that two-way conversation. I'd love to just kind of emphasize that. I think that's the sweet spot, right? That's what it's all about. And even from my perspective in Dell Technologies, we've had to adapt as recruiters, as you were saying as well, Mairead. We're changing, right? We have to constantly change and upskill ourselves as this acceleration is happening within our workforce. So how, for example, how we're doing that in Dell Technologies is we have an assessment center. So it's 3 different interviews that our grads do within one day, where they really get a feel of, for us, for our culture, as well as getting to meet different people in the business. And we get to see the whole person, right? So we have a technical interview where we learn about their hard skills and learn about their knowledge. And then we have a competency interview, which is really learning about them, their working style, all aligning to our culture code and our values and how we work. And then we have a group exercise as well, and that's really seeing how they work in a team. Where is the diversity of thought there in that group environment, and assessing those people's skills. So by giving the candidates the opportunity for all those different types of interviews, they get to see as well a number of people, their potential colleagues that they'll be working with, but also how our culture, how we interact with each other as interviewers. So we've really, just to emphasize your point, absolutely, Mairead, I fully agree that we're constantly changing what we're doing to make sure that we're catering for this new generation.
Great, thanks guys. And we know then that the next generation are said to be less loyal to, you know, to specific brands, and transferring that, the same could be then said of our organizations, right? So we know what's important to the next generation is that truly personalized career experience, and I think we're starting to see that come through. But on the flip side, if an organization can't offer this, candidates will ultimately just go elsewhere, right? And that's where the war on talent is starting to rear its head again. So what else is it, do you think, that the next generation are expecting of organizations now? And then I suppose kind of a follow on from that, how can organizations keep up with these requirements while also retaining and engaging their current workforce? So Julia, you are really representative of this generation. What do you think?
So before I delve into this, I'm just going to flag that the perspective of why STEM as a whole obviously comes from STEM students studying STEM in Ireland, where there's a large pool of multinationals and STEM graduates are very sought after. So it is a privileged perspective probably in that regard. But having said that, the first thing that young people look at across the board is salary, especially with the housing crisis. If you're expecting someone to move to Cork or Dublin, the first thing a young person looks at is how well are you paying me? Because it is very expensive to live in Ireland today. And with websites like Glassdoor, it's so accessible to just compare graduate salaries across the board and see, okay, that company probably values me more if they're paying me more. And definitely a buzzword with a lot of college courses, even in 6th year, is starter salary. That is such a big buzzword for young people, and it matters so much to young people, not from kind of a selfish perspective, but just from a pure necessity perspective. And that's the baseline. But beyond that then, you need to look at kind of the work environment you're creating for young people. So I think more than ever before, young people want to feel valued where they work. They want to feel this drive to want to go in the morning. So one way of doing that, like you said, is you're hiring young people for jobs that don't exist yet. So a lot of companies do rotations within their grad programs where you work on different teams within the grad program and gain experience on different teams to kind of figure out what you like. And that's something young people value a lot, because it's so hard to know what you want to do in college. I did an internship last summer where I was placed in a team. I didn't even know what the team name meant. So that experience meant so much to me, because I had never, ever, I wouldn't know that otherwise, but I know I really like that team now and I like the work they do. Then following on from that, do you sponsor a master's? Do you do maybe Lean Six Sigma training? Really, can you feel valued on a team? Do graduates get exposure to senior management? Again, on my internship last summer, we had huge exposure to senior management. We got to sit down and have conversations with senior managers about what we were adding to their team, and you feel as valued as a member of the team as anyone else. And that drives young people, I think, more than anything. It future-proofs your CV, for one, if you're giving them experience. And I think COVID has taught us that future-proofing your CV is probably the most important thing you can do for yourself. But also it drives you to get up in the morning. You want to go into the office, you know, because you are as valued as anyone else. You're not doing like the boring tasks, like you said, and that matters so much to Gen Z. And a lot of companies will do that. So if you're not, most likely they'll transfer to where their friends working that is happening, because there is a talent war, and that is how you retain talent. Following on from that, how do you treat your employees? Can I work from home on Fridays if I want to, so I can go home and see my family? Is there a work-life balance? Young people aren't interested in working 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's not something that appeals to young people. And again, because they know they can make money in teams where they are valued not working 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Why would they do that? So what do you give your employees? What do you give your employees, and specifically your young employees, to make them feel like you value them and you want them to be there? And then following on from that, is there projects outside of work they can do? Like, is there a women's network? Is there an LGBT network? Something kind of more personally, they can be more personally passionate about, but still within work, so that they feel proud of where they work as well. So I think when you look at young people, it's not like one thing they look for, it's this entire package that they can say, I work for X company and I am proud to work for X company because of this, 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 and this reason. And then maybe some people will end up working till 11 p.m, but because they want to, because they're proud to work for that company, not because their manager told them to. And I think that's what Gen Z really look for when they're looking at where to apply for.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Brilliant. Mairead, I'd like to just bring you in here again if you have anything that you think would be useful to add.
Yeah, no, Julie made some fantastic points there. We were actually blown away this year when we were doing interviews about the number of candidates that asked us, you know, what are we doing to support the Black Lives Matter movement? You know, this generation care more than ever about what's going on in the world and what the company stands for. They want a company that like aligns with their values, and you know, all that stuff about diversity and inclusion, the pods, the employee resource groups. It's all so important to like make sure that you're getting that out there. I do think as well is that this new generation like coming in, they know they're a bit more savvy and kind of self-driven, like, so I don't think it's necessarily about plotting out their whole career for them. It's more about giving them like an environment and a structure that's going to make them succeed. So, you know, not just like these initial trainings, but making sure that they have like the support network, that they understand how to, you know, look at themselves, how where they are about their own skills and what skills that they need to do to get to the next stop. You know, and it could be that like they're assessing, you know, okay, I need these 5 things. All right, maybe I am going to work till 11 o'clock because I want to get these trainings done. I want to get all this done because I want to progress faster. Or else they're like, no, I like my work-life balance. You know, I'll get there, but you know, it's going to take a bit longer and I'm going to do it in my own time. So I think like supporting them in terms of like, you know, money for self-development. Like we have a take program, so like after 1 year in the company you get $5,000 a year to put towards any sort of education events that you want to go to. Then after 3 years you can go and spend 2 weeks with another team, because like that's the other thing you want to think about. People join a company because of the culture, because of the people. It's not necessarily just because of the role. And you want them to be able to know that they can go into other roles within that company. They don't need to leave if they want to experience a different role. Like they have the opportunity in that company to get exposure. So if you've been in the company for 3 years, you can go and spend 2 weeks with another team and see, is that what you wanted to do? You know, it's good to sometimes go and experience first and go, actually, no, I don't like this. And then if you're in the company for 5 years, you actually go and can spend 3 months doing a totally different like job to what your own job is. And I think that like by giving people that kind of, you know, it's here, like you control your own career. We're giving you your like money towards your education. We're giving you the ability to go and see other departments, and we're also giving you access to all these senior people, you know, as in there's mentorship programs, there's, you know, tech talks, there's coffee chats, you know, with and I think even in this virtual world, like our onboarding for our graduates this year, they had the CEO come talk to them, you know, like who else gets those opportunities? It's fantastic. You know, but I think then they feel valued, they feel like their voice is heard, and they feel like they have control, and they know they have the options to choose their own journey. And like, I don't think for a company they're doing this just for this group. They need to do it for everyone. Like every employee needs to have that experience too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, that I was listening to a podcast the other night. Jess Kelly was doing her Tech in Town podcast, and she was interviewing Terry Maloney from Salesforce and her role as employee success, head of employee success. And she was talking exactly about that, right? About giving people control over their own careers. She actually went broader than that, right? To say that, you know, ultimately you're probably not going to keep everybody forever, right? But you want to give them the best opportunities while they're with you, so that they get the best experience, and that when they go out and go forth, that whoever they go to knows that they are as good as they are because of where they came from. And I just thought that was really powerful, and I just thought that really resonated with me, because over the course of people's careers, people do tend to move these days, and I think having that positive attitude, if people do tend to go elsewhere, it's not necessarily seen as a negative, but it's actually saying, well, we've invested in this person, now let them go out into the world and actually portray our brand,
Exactly.
you know, out there elsewhere.
Because they're often, you're going to end up like, you know, as you succeed, you're in the same industry a lot of the time, you'll end up meeting these people, they become your customers, your clients, and like sometimes people go back, like there's this whole boomerang thing as well, where they go experience other things, and then they're like, actually I'm going to take this more senior role back at VMware because I had a fantastic experience and I didn't burn any bridges when I left. You know, I knew that we had a good relationship.
Yeah, brilliant. And guys, you've touched on it a good bit already, so I'm going to just dive right into it, and that's around diversity and inclusion. So diversity is the real watchword for this generation, and as we've been saying, it isn't really just limited to gender and race anymore, but really across the full spectrum of D&I lenses, and including identity and orientation. And combining this with their preferences on how they work, where they work, and who they work with, organizations really need to fundamentally change how they organize, hire, retain, and ultimately develop this talent. So to attract and retain the best and brightest of this generation, organizations really have to change their mindset. Ashlyn, how's Dell tackling this from a D&I perspective?
Yeah, great question, Lee. So I suppose D&I and diversity and inclusion really is central to us in Dell Technologies, and specifically to my role in TA at the moment. It's something we talk about in our team on a daily basis, really, and it is a buzzword at the moment, right? So for me, I find it helpful sometimes to just remind myself the reason why we're doing diversity and inclusion in the first place, and it's for diversity of thought. Ultimately, it's about, you know, coming up with solutions to opportunities or problems, considering it from all different perspectives, and then ultimately delivering the best solution for our customers. So there's just so much research done now on how diverse teams have that positive business impact. So to answer your question, two things really come to mind here. One is a personal experience, and the other then is more about our global strategy. So firstly, personally, when I first joined Dell 2 weeks, I was in the company and I was asked by my manager to complete a MARC training. So MARC stands for Many Advocating Real Change. And in essence, it's a training awareness program to raise awareness on our unconscious bias. So that for me, right, it was the first training I ever did in my first official role out of college, 2 weeks in, and it really set the tone for, I suppose, what Dell Technology stands for, and also the tone for the expectations of me as an employee in terms of constantly challenging myself, constantly challenging my perspective, and then having the confidence and the openness within Dell Technologies for us to challenge each other as well. So that's just from a personal perspective. that training actually initially was for people leaders only, but since then it has been rolled out globally, because we've really realized that actually everybody has a role in diversity and inclusion, and it's not down to one specific department or one specific team, but actually it's a responsibility that all of us need to take. So that's the first bit. And then in terms of our strategy and our global strategy, we have our 2030 moonshot goals, which we're very excited by. So there's 4 different buckets there. There's advancing sustainability, cultivating inclusion, transforming lives, and then lastly, ethics and privacy. But the main one I think that jumps out here is that cultivating inclusion. And I suppose the inclusion, and why I'm talking about it so much, is that diversity doesn't stick unless there is a culture of inclusion. So it's really exciting. It's a super opportunity. It really gives us an opportunity as a team to identify talent that we would have never had access to before. Also getting the opportunity to create new talent pools. For example, as you know, Julia, there is a shortage of females in some of our STEM subjects in colleges. So we're looking now to see, okay, how can we create those talent pools? And one initiative that we did do was the Kickstart initiative, where we had a training program where we fully trained up any female who was interested in technology but may not know anything about it. There's an opportunity there where we fully trained them in Dell Technologies, and then they came into roles with us afterwards. So really, I suppose, focusing there on the bigger picture, and looking for opportunities and really thinking outside the box and how can we access those wider talent avenues.
Great, thank you. And Julia, just again, so from a women in STEM perspective, is there anything, I suppose, how does this resonate with you?
Yeah, so I think YSTEM is in this weird situation where we're a group of students, but we work with a lot of big companies, and something we've always had to be aware of is making sure that like people aren't just using it as kind of their diversity ticket to just say they've done it. So something we've always been really big on with Day One is just making sure that the companies we work with, diversity and inclusion goes to the core of what they do. So I know, even going back to Gen Z, for me and a lot of my peers, one of the first things I do for an interview is Google a company's corporate and social responsibility policy and their sustainability report, just to make sure that it's not just a flashy thing on Instagram, it's a culture. Like Ashlyn said, it goes to the core of what they do, and that is so important to us here at YSTEM. Our constitution is women and other minorities. So obviously, yeah, we focus on women in STEM, but it is so important to us as a society that they value diversity in all fields. So what is your neurodiversity policy? Maybe do you have an LGBT network? How do you support women coming into the office? How do you support like unconscious bias workshops? Things like that, just making sure that it's not just this one thing you say to make sure you look good in public. It's really a culture in the office, and everyone's supported and everyone's on an equal playing field when they go into the office, and that is so important to YSTEM. And it makes sure that as a society we represent people we're really proud of, not just people who are like saying that they love women in STEM so that they can get an award or that they can look really good on social media. Like, that's not what we're about, and it's not what I would ever want the D&I discussion to be about, which is why we also try to bring in discussions around neurodiversity and LGBT and race in the workplace as well. So I think when you're looking at workplaces, then that means that diversity has to be an investment. It's not enough just do it once. You have to have a team that really build and look at the office and say, how can we improve here? How can we improve here? How can we show young people that this is a dedication to us? This is somewhere you'll be proud to work. This is something you can get involved in. A lot of young people are really passionate about being involved in improving diversity in the workplace because we know we bring a new perspective. So maybe some companies have internships specifically for people with autism or ADHD. Is that something you've looked at doing? Because like Ashlyn said, diverse teams yield better results. So it's an investment for business, but it's also an investment on a personal level, I think, as well. So I think that's always going to be the YSTEM perspective. Maybe do you offer scholarships? What's your perspective on those? You know, like, just really make sure it's at the core of everything you do in the business on a day-to-day, not just like a once-off event you do with the college society. And that's the YSTEM perspective on things, really, is everything we have is a long-standing collaboration. It's not a one-off event that you just say, so you tick the box on diversity.
Great. And Julia, what is the reaction that you're having from companies when you're having these discussions? You know, are they surprised by, I suppose, how much that you guys expect from them, or, you know, does it sort of represent a big change within their organizational structure and policies, or are you seeing that they're on the right track and, you know, they're doing their best and maybe it's just not part of the culture yet? What are you seeing on the ground?
It very much varies. So some companies say we've been working with since day one and they would have contacted us. And in those companies, it very much is a culture and they kind of suggest things to us. So for example, one company we work with a lot is Johnson & Johnson. They have 3 pillars across their YSTEM 2D platform. So there's youth, university, and workforce. And so then they kind of come to us like, how can we unite those pillars? So we have one pillar, but how do we unite them? How do we make sure you go from schools all the way up to directors and that and kind of help them create that leaky pipe, making sure we close the leaky pipeline. So you have companies like that kind of come to us raring with ideas, being like, we just need you to help us stop this gap. But then you have other companies who perhaps haven't worked with the College Society before. So they send you one email and then I'll always be like, can I set up a call with you? So then they set up the call. And I think in the call, they are always a bit like, oh my God, because I'm always so big on this is a long-standing collaboration. This isn't one thing you're doing. And so then we go through ideas, we run through them. And there is sometimes that they do say, okay, we don't have that in the office. So then you kind of suggested to them, like, have you done a site tour with a college society before? Things like that, just bring people into the office, show them the office. Have you considered maybe doing a mentorship program? Mentorship programs are a big thing, so I don't think a lot of companies consider that students really value, and that helps people feel included in a company's culture. So that's something we've suggested to companies before. So yeah, it really does range from the companies that are really experienced in it to the companies that are brand new, and there's a very wide range. So there definitely is a stopgap to fill there, just because, you know, not everyone's there yet.
I was just going to say, Julia, thank God you said that, because I think we were called next week. I was like, I'll have my stuff prepared by then.
Yeah, no, I'm used to it. I'm always like, I think if people are always a bit taken aback when they call me, they're like, oh my God.
Great, very good. And apologies, I should have said right at the outset, guys, for anybody listening on the line, if anyone has any questions, just pop them into the chat box and we can direct them to any of our members of the panel today as well. So jump
in the principles, we have definition 2, where we simply say V denotes the value of an option.
Right.
S.
Just so I'm not thinking we had a bit of interference there. So moving on then, as Julia, you so rightly mentioned earlier, right? Salary and job security matter more to this generation probably than they have, say, for Generation Y or the millennials. And that's, you know, very much stemming from what we're seeing now, having grown up sort of understanding the outcomes of the recession and the tolls that that took on families growing up and things like that, right? But there are many other values then that it holds near and dear. And it's really important for the next generation to work with organizations and for organizations whose values align to their own and to who they can really identify with and find their identity within them and hold up that mirror as well. Personally for us at KPMG, what we're currently seeing are more and more organizations starting to look internally at their own org culture and their own values and starting to assess this baseline. Starting to assess this baseline to see if it really meets with the expectations of their employees. And then these new org cultures are starting to be built and realigned in tandem, say, with both the leadership and the employee to reflect the values that matter most across the spectrum of generations in the workforce. So, Prince, I might come to you on this one. How important is an organization's culture and having aligned values with their employees?
Thanks, Lee, for the question. As you mentioned, like values and culture is pretty important for an individual or an employee to enjoy what he or she is doing. Like I really like what Julia mentioned earlier about a person working 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's not what it is. It's about how a person is valued, how the company adds value. So that's very important over here. Like, for example, a company culture and values are important to employees because employees are more likely to enjoy work when their needs and values are consistent with their employers. Like, and if you work somewhere where the culture is good fit, you'll tend to develop better relationships with the co-workers and be more productive. Like I remember when I joined my company, IBM, and initial days I used to see like there's a lot of employees who are like working there for 14 years, 22 years, 11 years, 10 years. I'm like, wow, that is something amazing. Like, and eventually as I grew in that organization, my personal experience, I realized there's a reason towards it. Like there's a reason why people leave the company. Well, to be honest, people don't leave the company, they leave their manager. So my personal experience, as I mentioned, like when I joined, the work was pretty intense as a DevOps engineer, but doing it all alone was not that easy. But having the support of the company, my team, that was really important. Like whenever, like as a team working with a sense of mission, having that sense of urgency, whenever the help is needed, that help is there. So all these comes with the culture and the values. Now, if anyone new joins the company in my team, I duplicate the same thing. So the duplication always remains. Like, so a well-functioning culture assists always with onboarding, and it transforms your company into a team. Like, and organizational culture is about living your company's core values, and culture impacts overall performance and employee well-being. Like, with that being said, back to host. Like,
absolutely, absolutely. And great. So, and Ashlyn, then how do you find Dell manages, that you would have a much more multi-generational culture? How are you finding that?
Yeah, so I think when I do think about this is we always try and go back and think that actually our workforce, even though it's multi-gen, we're all people. So we're not abstract generational categories, for example, and so the fundamentals will remain the same. We've heard a lot now about being valued. Everyone, no matter what generation you're in, we want to be valued, we want to be trusted, we want to be connected with each other, and we want to feel included. So there, I think that the foundations, and then I think in terms of what Dell Technologies do in terms of catering for the multi-generational workforce is that we have something for everyone. So for example, with our career development, we have regular one-to-ones with our managers building out a development plan, for example, and we have a specific tool actually dedicated to it as well here in Dell Technologies. So that career development conversation may not always be focused on going up the ladder or climbing the ladder or where can I get a promotion next. It really has that multi-dimensional approach of personal growth, professional growth. Maybe you want to build a network in the organization, maybe you want to build an understanding of a particular topic, or maybe you want to get experience in leading a group. So whatever that looks like, firstly, you'll be given the tools to figure out what you want to do next, and then you'll be working with your manager to really help you get there. I think another aspect is CSR. We've heard a lot about it, corporate social responsibility. It plays a huge role here, right? Giving back to the community, as Julia was mentioning, not just putting it on social media, but actually doing it, right? And having it core to what we value and believe in on a daily basis. So we've a strong employee resource group community. For example, we've a suite of 13 different groups at the moment. They're quite similar to interest groups. They're clubs and socks, similar to them from college days. And really, they give you the opportunity there to work together as a cross-functional team. So again, working with different business units, completely different teams, but also different generations, right? So for example, from my perspective, I'm involved in Gen X. So that's really about connecting new hires, young professionals, and the current Dell employees established in their careers through engagement, professional development, and community involvement. So we organize events together as a team. We do charity events. We do reverse mentorship where actually our senior leaders are learning from us. We're learning from those leaders. So we have a strong mentorship program in place as well. But really, I suppose, equipping everybody within the workforce, no matter what generation they're in, no matter where they want to go, giving them the tools to drive it, and then just facilitating that as a company from a management and leadership level.
That's great, Aisling. You just triggered an old memory in my head, and a role that I held previously where LinkedIn was still quite a new phenomenon at the time. And when our graduates came in, one of the first tasks they were set was to set up the LinkedIn profiles for our managing directors. And they did that in tandem with the managing directors. And it was an amazing exposure experience for the graduates to do something that came so naturally to them, but something that was very scary for a lot of the MDs at the time to kind of hold themselves to account and actually put down on paper and on the internet, a lot of the stuff that you would normally see in your CV and you would never share broadly, or would never put in a public forum. So that was a really interesting piece of work that we did at the time, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal in shaping early relationships as well with that younger generation and the more senior stakeholders. So things like reverse mentoring, I think, are amazing initiatives that should be promoted across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I remember taking part. I think I was 6 months in the company for our very first one. And again, like that, it was, you know, oh my goodness, what do I even ask? Where do I even begin? But it really opened my eyes into actually these directors, senior directors, VPs, they're people too. So I think that really, you know, broke that barrier down very early in my career, and again, really set the tone. So yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Great. So obviously, so there's one topic, and I know it's probably on everyone's mind, but I tried to hold it back till towards the end, the kind of the elephant in the room, and that's the global pandemic that we're currently in, of COVID-19. And, you know, overnight, the normal ways of working were completely flipped on their head. And, you know, we've moved from a society that works, Julia, as you so eloquently put it, that works exceptionally long hours in the office, and maybe not always 7 to 11. But we've moved then to, you know, a complete remote work, almost complete remote working society. And flexible and remote ways of working, as we've heard, are of key importance to the next generation. And as a fallout of COVID-19 and the pandemic, society at large has proven that remote working is possible. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Can organizations do better? Yes. And must we as employees and leaders and future leaders, must we do better? And the answer is absolutely, because let's face it, now that remote working is here, it's not going anywhere. And there's probably a hybrid approach at some point in the future, but I think everybody likes that element of flexibility in their day. But this is a real learning curve that we're all going on together, and every generation is now facing new challenges with working remotely. But there are, you know, that also comes with some big opportunities and some great benefits to be gained as well. I was listening again back to, you probably guess I like listening to podcasts, but I was listening back to some podcasts in May during our initial lockdown, where some of the professional services firms carried out some initial research that showed that productivity was actually up as a result of working a remote working environment. And this was at the time was seen as a really positive thing. And the more I got to thinking about it, and the more I've, you know, learned and researched about it since then, is that the truth is it's far, far too early to tell if that spike in productivity is sustainable over time. And I suppose while it's true that we've gotten, I think we have gotten really efficient. We've gotten really good at actioning. We've gotten really good at getting through our to-do list and at doing tasks. But what's harder to measure then are the things like creativity, like innovation and collaboration, that you only really get from face-to-face interactions with your colleagues. You know, how, you know, bouncing ideas off each other, that constructive challenge and really testing our ideas and our concepts. It's very, very hard to do that over a call or over a Zoom call. And it's going to take time to fully understand the impact of this. And as new levels of Zoom fatigue start to creep in, I think we can probably all agree that that's definitely one of the probably not so great things is the constant being on all the time. What are organizations doing to really support next generation about to embark on their mostly virtual career journey at the moment? And also those in the workforce for whom, you know, remote working is still kind of an alien concept, and it kind of forcing a square peg into a round hole, and it mightn't be something that they're so comfortable with. So Prince, we might go back to you on this one. Tell us a bit about your experience and how you see people adapting to this new normal.
Yep. Thanks for the question again, Lee. So there are multiple aspects for this. Well, COVID has definitely caused disruptions for sure. And as you mentioned about like working as a team and challenging the thought process, all those things we're gonna miss. And that was the initial days we used to actually miss all those things, but companies have come up with a lot of innovative ways. Like I remember back in the days, just recently, obviously, we used to have calls on WebEx, and there were very few people who used to switch on their camera. And I had never seen a lot of my colleagues back in Canada or maybe Australia. And things changed when we started working from home. The WebEx, the only way to connect, obviously, just to have the video cameras on and we could see our teammates and stuff. And I saw a lot of people, and there were different ways of connecting with the team. Like we used to have every Friday evenings, we used to have a get together, maybe with a pint or something, or maybe with a tea or anything like. So those ways to connect and discuss ideas and challenge thoughts and stuff like that. So little things, but eventually we are getting there. So initial days of COVID, I believe things were unsettled. Businesses were impacted, but eventually things are settling up. I won't say completely, but at least we are there or making progress towards it. It was like a muddy water. Initially, it's all unsettled, but eventually the mud settles down. So we are just on the days of that, just progressing, but yeah, it has impacted. So businesses and companies adapted to work in a way, and they have learned how to keep the business running, which is very important. And people have embraced the new way of working as well, like working from home. In my case, as I mentioned, like it's sleeping at workplace. So just my bed is over here, I'm here working this. It's okay, like, but the travel distance to my office is much larger than from my bed to my workplace here, which is convenient. It's like a blessing in disgrace, I would say. But anyways, jokes apart. So COVID-19 has forced companies to upgrade, update, and adapt to the new situation by taking necessary risks. And geography won't be a problem anymore. Scalability became more easier at some point, at least. And although we cannot predict the future for this next generation, as you mentioned, Lee, especially for the planners, but we can help prepare for it. And for all the benefits of working from home, COVID-19 has many detrimental impacts on jobs, maybe on training, diversity, and creativity. And for the next generations of planners, keeping on the mind and top of the agendas, like training and maximizing the opportunity will be the key, I feel, to reversing the disruptions of the virus, which has caused, like, yeah, that's from me.
You're never late for work, so Prince.
I try for that, but
I did want to add, like, I do think everyone's touched on this, like the whole humanizing aspect. Like, I do feel that with Zoom, you know, even though I'm not seeing my team in Cork anymore, like the people that I'm dealing with all across the world, I'm seeing more of who they are in their lives, you know, what they have behind them. I think you're learning a lot more about people, and you're building connections with a wider kind of group as well. Like, I don't want to be in the Zoom world all my life, but like, I do feel like for certain aspects it has been a positive. As I said, those interns getting exposure to the CEO now in their onboarding was amazing. But I think that it's important as well for companies to realize, like, you know, everything doesn't need to be a meeting. Like, you can do a lot over Teams and these kind of platforms as well. You know, you don't need to have calls. And when you do have calls, do you need to be at your computer? Like we were told a few weeks ago, it's like, where you can, put on your AirPods and go out for a walk and do your call, your one-to-ones while walking, you know? So I think, you know, having people as well, like a senior level, tell you or show by their example that, like, you don't need to be stuck to your computer to be working. Like, I suppose it's easy in VMware because we're all about virtualization, that you can work from everywhere. But I have a horse, I go over there at lunch break and I might be on a call or I'm doing it and I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm just over my horse. And they're like, that's amazing. That's all about what our company is about. And I think that when you feel like you don't have to be tied to your desk and that you can still have a bit of a life, you know, it just makes you happier. You're getting the work done, but you're doing it in your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on one thing, Prince, that you mentioned about the commute from your bedroom to your laptop, right? And for me, right, that's one thing, I suppose, I've been lucky enough to be able to have remote working for the not solely remote working, but the flexibility to remote work for most of my career. But something that I did struggle with in the early days was when you are remote working is knowing how and when to switch off. And for me, the actual commute was always a key. Like, now I am leaving work, the laptop is closed, I'm getting on the dart, I'm getting on the bus, I can put my headphones in and I can kind of decompress from the day. And then when I get home, I'm home, I can see my kids, I can spend time with them, and it's meaningful and valuable time. Whereas the working from home days, particularly previously years ago, when it was quite difficult to kind of know when to shut the laptop down. I'll run down, I'll make dinner, I'll watch Love Island, I'll do something to chill out for a while, and then I'll creep back upstairs and I might have a sneaky look at my emails. And I think now more than ever is really important to try and find that balance and actually calling it quits when it is time to call it quits. I think part of that self-care is really, really important. I think as a workforce, we're very hard workers, and I think that knowing when to actually say enough is really important, and people being empowered to actually say, well, I'm actually shutting down for the day now, and knowing that things are going to come in later on in the evening because everyone's working at the hours that suits them, but it's okay to actually leave it until tomorrow and pick up again the next day. The work is still going to be there. Just Aisling and Julia, do you guys have anything else on that one specifically? Because we have a couple of questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so if you guys want to have anything else to add on that, we might dip into some of the questions.
Yeah, I'd say dip into the questions. Obviously I don't work from home technically. I do college from home, so I don't have the best perspective on it.
Yeah, I might just, oh, sorry, Lee, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Go on, go ahead.
Not at all. I might just add one thing. I think you made a really good point there, right? We are missing that car journey. I'm definitely missing it, and I never thought I would. But I'm missing the listening to the radio, that tuning out time, logging off. And I think what's important is to, if we can at all, is to try and mimic it. So maybe we log off, but we stay in our rooms and we just listen to music for 20 minutes before we go downstairs, or whatever that kind of winding down time looks for you. I think it's something that we need to start mimicking. Even in the mornings, I'm starting to do it now. Before I log on, I'll listen to Red FM for 10 minutes before I even log on, because that's what I used to do, and that's my morning routine. And I think in Dell Technologies, we have what we call our people's philosophy, and it really is what the company do globally to show that they care about us as employees just as much as we have policies and ways that we support our customers. The people's philosophy is all about supporting us and caring for us as employees, and it's now more than ever so relevant. So it's based on achievement, balance, and connection, and I think putting those three into place every day. Achievement right now for me is my balance, for example. So what that looks like for me is I'm actually going to have a successful day if I do log off at 5, and you know what that looks like for you, and redefining those goals for yourself as well, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ashlyn. So I might just move over to a couple of the questions. And Julia, the first one here is for you. So so I suppose, and you may or may not be able to answer, so I appreciate if you can't, what companies that you've interacted with to date would you love to work for, and why?
So I'm in 3rd year, so at the moment I'm kind of thinking about, okay, so this time next year I'll be applying for grad programs, applying for masters, and kind of deciding what I want to do. And like I already said, like I'm really big on wasting money working with companies that we're actually proud to work for. So on a kind of overall sense, I'd probably happily work for all of them. And I know I'm so lucky to have had that kind of exposure so early on in my career. So I'm probably not comfortable saying which ones I very publicly want to work for. But what it's going to come down to for me is salary, moving costs, because as a financial math student, I probably am going to have to move to Dublin. So a big thing for me is going to be salary, moving costs, work-life balance, the corporate and social responsibility, and kind of how deep it runs into the company. They're probably going to be the 4 main things that I look for. And listen, Joe, if they have a cool office with like a slide, I wouldn't complain either. That's going to be what it comes down to for me. And most of them do fit that criteria. I obviously have my favorites, but I don't think I should probably answer that publicly.
Fair enough. Very good. And another question then that's come in. So guys, interviewing the next generation, what techniques have you found that really work better rather than the typical standard 1-hour questions? And I know we, actually you kind of touched on this earlier, but we may be interesting just to explore it a bit further.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that 1-hour interview for grads, we have revamped it, right? So we have assessment centers now, and I think it's just so important, just going back to that 2-way communication, for the candidate to get to know who we are, what we stand for, before they ever even come to interview. They'll have multiple calls with us in TA. We'll be going through a lot about what the role is about, what Dell Technologies stands for. We'll be giving some guidance tips to prepare you for that assessment center as well, because ultimately we want you to be successful. We want you to be your best self coming into the interview, and if we can take out any of those unknowns going into the assessment center, we will, because we just want you to be your best self and put your best foot forward there. So definitely changing the way we interact with our candidates, and how we assess our candidates have changed. So looking at that technical skills, looking at the competency, how they work, how they interact, and then looking at that group as well. So we're really getting to see the overall candidate, how they work in different environments, and get to know them as an entire person.
Great, brilliant. And Mairead, this one is for you. So what changes has VMware put in place or is planning to put in place to continue to attract top talent in light of COVID-19?
I suppose like we've been working with this company, and they gave us some research of late that students feel a little bit disheartened about, you know, their career aspects at the moment, because I suppose a lot of them had internships and graduate programs cancelled due to COVID. So for VMware, it's getting out there and making sure the students know that we're still hiring. We've also, you know, obviously moved all our hiring to kind of a virtual world. Even when COVID kicked off, a lot of my events were cancelled, and I think it was like March, I decided, okay, I'll do a virtual event. I'll see, you know, the CTO in Europe said that he would do this event on artificial intelligence. You know, I thought it was an interesting topic. It's not necessarily about working in VMware, but it's something that, you know, people might be interested in. We had 800 people sign up and 500 people attend from across Europe. Yeah. So after that, I was like, well, you know, like, we can do any sort of virtual events, we can do panel discussions, we can do D&I, and like, it's more about giving back, giving information, helping people have tips and stuff for their career progression, not just about working in the company. So I think that that's probably like an easy way to start to keep on attracting the brand. And as well, like tools, like, you know, even for me, because I cover EMEA, you don't necessarily always find the talent you're looking for just where you're looking. You know, it could be in any other country across Europe. So I'm using a lot of fantastic tools that give us more kind of a scope. Like, we're going to career fairs where there are more universities attending, you know, and that just gives you kind of a wider range. And building onto that then as well, like in VMware, because of COVID, like, we've really looked at where our workforce needs to be, and like, they don't need to be in the office. So we're giving employees the flexibility to choose what they want to do, even when COVID is over. So the majority of our roles now will be posted as, you know, you can work remotely. So once we have a legal entity there, there's no reason why people can't work there. So I think it just gives like a wider span to hire the right talent as well.
Great, brilliant, thank you for that. And then, okay, so this one's probably for across the board, so anybody who wants to jump in, please do. So I'm a member of a smaller company. Where would you recommend we start with our company culture branding externally? So I suppose maybe personally from your guys' experience, or maybe Julia, from what you would expect to see out in the marketplace, what are your views?
I think for a smaller company, a big thing would be, so getting involved with college societies is a huge thing. It doesn't have to be YSTEM, obviously they're my favorite, but any college society is going to give you reach to students that you're not going to get otherwise, because it's students running it. And then beyond that, making sure you create a really well-established brand. So what do I get when I go into that company? What is your structure for grad programs? Having a youth-specific program is really, really important, I think. Rather than having entry-level roles, having a youth-specific program, I think, is really important. Then kind of creating, like, highlighting what the opportunities are for young people there. So because it's a small company, would you have more responsibility than in a big company? That could be really good to highlight to young people, I think, personally. And then, yeah, going out to the societies, giving talks, showing what a day in the life is like in that company, just really showing young people, like, why would you want to work here compared to a big company? I think if you can really, like, play on the small company side and explain why it's cooler, that would be really good, because I know a lot of young people who are more interested in working for smaller companies because they think it fits their career goals better. So you can use that to your advantage if you play it right, I think, personally, especially if you have a specific youth program.
Great.
You don't need a massive marketing budget either. Like, social media is free, you know, just create your Instagram account, your even TikTok these days, Snapchat, create that and just get your company brand out there and get the employees that are working with you to start sharing and tagging and things like that, because that's what students will look for when they start Googling who you are.
Yeah, if you can get students to talk about you to their friends and stuff, that's a big thing. I know when I did my internship last summer, they got us to become brand ambassadors. So we posted things on our social media and stuff like that. And I honestly think the biggest development they had in terms of brand awareness wasn't the professional stuff they did. It was us putting stories on our Snapchats of something funny that happened in work. You know, I think that was honestly probably the biggest development they got in terms of brand. So just getting young people involved, doing even one day where loads of young people come into the office. Obviously that's not possible with COVID, but just things like that, really creating a brand that young people are like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, I wonder what they do, I'm going to Google them and see if they've youth opportunities, you know, that kind of way. I think that really works well.
Great, guys, thank you. And unfortunately, we are just coming up on time, so we don't have time just to finish off the remainder of the questions. But Julia, Mairead, Prince, and Ashlyn, I would really like to thank you for your time. It's been really insightful. Your perspectives are diverse and varied, and it's been my pleasure to chat to you this afternoon. So I hope everyone on the line has got as much out of this as I have. And I thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for listening. So we'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Lee.
Thank you.
Yours.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lee.